From our friends in the north to Doctor Who, Christopher Eccleston has enjoyed huge success as a stage and screen actor, but now he's revealed that since childhood he suffered from anorexia and a hatred of his own body.
Yes, in a new book he says that being a working class man from the north of England prevented him from seeking help sooner. Let's get more on this with Tom Quinn from the eating disorder charity Beat and Dave Chawner, a comedian and author who's lived with anorexia since his late teens. And this is, you know, people who are hearing that news this morning, Christopher Eccleston, you know, you probably make lots of assumptions about an actor. This is not what you expect. What do you think about him saying this and coming out about it? It's incredibly helpful for people.
I think it's incredibly helpful, incredibly brave, and I think it's amazing that people can hear that, you know, sort of like men do get eating disorders too. And also I think it's quite nice that he's kind of raised that, like, he's, you know, he's sort of like from a working class background, because I think that debunks a lot of the myths that people might have about eating disorders.
And also, Tom, there are those sort of feelings about you know, men suffering in silence, and here's a perfect example of someone who's been incredibly successful and yet has been really struggling with this for most of his life.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it's really sad that he suffered for so long in silence, but incredibly brave that he's come out now and helped to show that anyone, however successful, whatever your background, can suffer, unfortunately. And hopefully this is now an encouragement for other people out there who perhaps are suffering in silence, or perhaps you've got a family member that you're worried about, to actually say, well, it's not just a feminine illness, it's not just an illness that affects certain people from certain backgrounds. Actually, unfortunately, anyone can be affected.
Dave, you're here because you yourself suffered, so tell us when you first started having issues.
So I kind of like developed anorexia when I was 17, but I didn't like realise at the time that I'd kind of developed it. It was something that was quite slow to manifest, and like also I think I never gained any perspective on my own experience. So people around me realised that the calorie counting, the exercising, the weighing myself was abnormal, but I didn't realise. And I didn't seek treatment until I was 24, which was like 7 years of the illness. And that was just purely because I never felt anorexic enough, because, you know, like Tom sort of says, I thought anorexia was about severity, but it's not. It's about impact. It's not about how thin you are. It's about how much it impacts your kind of life.
So how did you eventually, obviously you now managed to deal with that, did you find out, did you sort of understand yourself that you were anorexic, or did you need somebody to sort of say to you, listen, this is what you're going through?
I think both are really helpful. Like, a lot of people for a lot of time have been saying, oh, you're anorexic, and I kind of you know, sort of wafted that off, but eventually it kind of drove me to quite severe depression, and I ended up severely clinically anorexic, and I had to go and get help for the depression. But wonderful GP said to me, like, it's kind of like you wouldn't expect your laptop to work if you don't charge it. And it's exactly the same with your brain. If you don't fuel it, why would you expect it to work?
I'm just looking at some of the quotes here from Christopher Eccleston. They're really powerful. He says, I was in a state of extreme anxiety, convinced I was either going to die or I was going to kill myself. Many times I wanted to reveal that I'm a lifelong anorexic and dysmorphic as well. Tom, how much difference can, for example, early intervention make? Because, you know, he's talked about many years he went on like this without seeking help.
So we believe that at any stage of the illness, recovery is possible, but the evidence is really clear that the earlier you are treated, the more likely you are to make a full recovery. So again, I'd really encourage people that are worried about themselves or you know, or a loved one to don't delay, actually get help as quickly as possible. Nothing to be embarrassed about. Unfortunately, plenty of people do suffer from this illness, so it's really critical to get help immediately.
Sorry to jump in. What sort of things are causing eating disorders in men, do you think? Are there sort of general, are there general themes, or is it specific?
So we don't think there are particular causes for men as opposed to women. For many people it's a coping mechanism. It's not actually about really the food itself, it's more a coping mechanism for other feelings of depression or anxiety, and so people feel that, you know, there is something here that they can control a bit where perhaps everything else in their life feels out of control.
Yeah, I've seen you nodding along to that, Dave. Was that exactly your issue?
Yeah, I think for me it was a disease coping mechanism, like people might turn to substance abuse, etc. And for me it was a number of different things. It was a way to numb unwanted emotions. And as odd as it sounds, it was kind of like an addiction. It was a little win. I felt like I was rubbish at everything else at life, and if I could get down to X number, if I could restrict for X amount, if I could exercise for X long, I was a success. And I think one of the things that we see in kind of social media and stuff, you know, increasingly people feeling like they're a failure, which is one thing that I do want to point out, is that Beat have incredible resources online and through social media channels, which is really useful.
So good to talk to you, Dave. Thank you very much indeed, Chawner and Tom Quinn. Thank you.